Coming in at number 10, we have James Proudstar, aka the hero Warpath. A mutant that developed superhuman strength, Warpath idolized the X-Men as a young man when his older brother, Thunderbird, joined the team. However, Thunderbird tragically died on his very first mission, an incident that caused Warpath to begin to hate the X-Men and become obsessed with killing Professor Charles Xavier. Briefly joining with the villain group called the Hellions, Warpath would eventually see the error of his ways and return to the side of good, frequently fighting alongside the New Mutants to help save both humanity and all of mutant kind. Coming in at number 9, we have Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. That's right, while she might be best known now for being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and being one of the most resourceful members on the Avengers team, the Black Widow still has an awful lot of red in her ledger. In her very first appearance, Black Widow was attempting to rob Iron Man's tech with the help of another villainous thief at the time, Hawkeye. While Hawkeye would see the error of his ways a bit quicker than Natasha, she would go on to be brainwashed by the infamous Red Room, training her to be a remorseless assassin, skills that she now uses today as a member of the Avengers to try and make up for her bloody past. Coming in at number 8, we have Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. Originally believed to have perished during Captain America's World War II era adventures, Bucky was in fact captured and brainwashed by the villainous organization Hydra, turning him into the perfect weapon and such a deadly assassin that he would become infamous throughout the Marvel Universe, even rumored to be involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It was only through the dedication of his best friend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, that Bucky was finally able to remember who he is and abandon his villainous career. While he's since started using his lethal training for the side of good, the Winter Soldier is still a brutal opponent, and with an arm made out of pure vibranium, surviving one of his punches is something that his enemies should definitely still be worried about. Coming in at number 7, we have the infamous Harley Quinn. Originally a psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum who took a particular fascination in the Joker, Harleen Quinzel was manipulated over time into breaking the Joker free and killing a guard, before the Joker pushed her into a similar vat of chemicals to the one that had created him in the first place. Reborn as the Joker's second in command, Harley believed she was in love for years as she helped the Joker with his schemes and war against Batman, but would eventually come to realize that the Joker was a violent man with no genuine feelings for her. Ever since, Harley has struggled to keep doing the right thing and has become more of an anti-hero than an outright villain, fighting back against the clown prince of crime that took so much away from her. Coming in at number 6, we have Selina Kyle, aka the one and only Catwoman. Originally just a cat burglar in a slightly more elaborate costume, Catwoman terrorized Gotham City for a while as her heists grew more and more elaborate and continued to be foiled by that pesky Batman. Eventually, however, Selina would wind up prioritizing those she cares about more than her thieving ways or connections to other supervillains, and combined with her growing romance with Batman after years of merely being flirty rivals, it finally looks like Catwoman might be permanently fighting for the good guys from now on. Just, you know, don't blame her if anything too expensive goes missing. Coming in at number 5, we have Patrick O'Brien, aka Plastic Man. Typically seen as one of the comic relief members of the Justice League, Plastic Man's origins actually began with him being a common criminal, a safecracker for a band of burglars. Following a robbery gone wrong, Patrick was shot, covered in chemicals, and left for dead, unintentionally causing his transformation into Plastic Man. Capable of completely manipulating his body down to the molecular level, Plastic Man is essentially indestructible given how flexible he's able to become. Completely impervious to physical damage, Plastic Man has also shown a complete immunity to mind control or telepathic suggestions, as his brain isn't made of enough solid matter to control, All of these facts combined make Plastic Man a very redeemed superhero. Coming in at number 4, we're gonna have to go with the famous, or should I say infamous, Deadpool. Originally designed to be a dark but slightly sarcastic villain for the X-Force comic series, Deadpool has over the years turned into a charming and fourth wall breaking anti-hero that's always trying to do some form of good, but sometimes shows it in some pretty odd and violent ways. However, the most notable aspect of Deadpool's powers and what makes him so powerful is his sheer inability to die. No matter how many times you stab him, shoot him, or chop some bits off, Deadpool will always bounce back with at least a couple of bad jokes. Add in his not insignificant skill with all manner of firearms and weaponry, and you've got an explosive anti-hero you do not want to mess with. Coming in at number 3, we have Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver. A super speedster with a complicated backstory that's gone back and forth on both his parentage and whether his powers are mutant in origin, Quicksilver was one of the original members of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, before eventually being convinced of Magneto's villainy — I wonder if the phrase evil mutants had anything to do with that — and joined the Avengers instead, at the very same time as early member Hawkeye. With nearly all of his abilities focused on making his body and movement as aerodynamic as possible, Quicksilver's speed has been theorized to be limitless, even if his powers don't quite compare to all of the extra abilities of the DC Universe's Speed Force. Nevertheless, Quicksilver is incredibly fast for the Marvel Universe, and let's keep hoping that he continues to run for the good guys. Coming in at number 2, we have Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch. Originally believing herself to be the mutant daughter of Magneto, Wanda is in reality one of the most powerful magic wielders in the Marvel multiverse, and a conduit for chaos magic that allows her to rewrite reality to her will. And while she was one of the first members of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, given the whole thought he was her dad thing, she'd eventually become an essential member of the Avengers, even if she does occasionally have brief forays into more anti-hero-like activities, such as the whole M-Day scenario. But hey, nobody's perfect. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we've got Eddie Brock, aka the iconic Venom. From Spider-Man's edgier looking costume, to a bulky web-slinging supervillain, to the lethal protector of San Francisco, Venom has held more jobs over the years than anyone else. But with the recent defeat of the dark symbiote god known as Null, Venom has become the leader of the symbiotes entirely, and thus has one of the most unstoppable armies in the entire Marvel Universe at his beck and call, alongside the fourth dimension spanning ability to interact with any symbiote throughout both space and time. Let's hope that Venom keeps on leaning on the hero part of anti-hero, because otherwise, all of these additional power boosts that he's gone through recently could wind up being a huge problem for the rest of the Marvel Universe.
At number 10, I'm putting Hawkeye. Introduced first as a circus performer, Hawkeye starts his career as not much of a hero at all, but a villain. When he first decides to put on the suit and start going by the Hawkeye moniker, he teams up with Black Widow and takes on numerous heroes as a bad guy. After he and Black Widow fall in love, they become committed to this lifestyle for 2 whole years. But after his time as a crook, Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, decides it's time for him to change things up. Basically, he just realizes that the supervillain lifestyle isn't for him and approaches the Avengers with the proposition that he joins them. Pretty bold. But they actually accept his offer, and he seamlessly joins the team and fights evil for the rest of his career. It's a pretty quick and easy transition to the good side, and it proves that it's not always some big event or reckoning that can change someone's moral alignment. Sometimes you just gotta go with your gut. At number 9 is the Riddler. This is a pretty goofy one because the Riddler makes this shift to the good side due to a bonk on the head by Shining Knight, which I think is a very funny way to turn to the good side. Not only does he decide he's finished with a life of crime, but he also loses his interest in riddles entirely. And with his memory of all his past deeds wiped, he's able to start completely anew as a detective on the streets of Gotham. With a bit of an infamous celebrity status, as you could expect, Detective Riddler has a decent career as a detective and is even hired by Batman and Nightwing twice along the way. A Riddler with no interest in Riddlers or doing harm, I suppose, just leaves a pretty smart dude who can get stuff done. He still wears all green though, which probably isn't great for blending in. At number 8 is Sandman. Yes, believe it or not, Sandman has actually been part of the Avengers before. One night, the Thing from the Fantastic Four actually sits Sandman down at a bar and tries to talk him out of his life of crime over a beer, and it works. After this, Sandman joins up with the Outlaws, which is a team of villains that are searching for a different path in life, which I imagine is like the AA for supervillains. And after actually helping Spider-Man on a handful of missions, Sandman actually receives a presidential pardon and is offered a spot with the Avengers. But unfortunately, with a little bit of lazy writing, Wizard later uses his magic to brainwash Sandman and turn him back to his evil roots. Reverted back to his previous state, Sandman brings the Sinister Six back together and tries to take down Spider-Man again. But for that short time, it was a great storyline of redemption for a character that really felt like he deserved a second chance. Alright, at number 7 we've got Rogue. This is a pretty cool one. Originally brought on by Mystique to join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Rogue is only a teen when she chooses the path of evil. But the way she gets out of her dark ways is pretty unique and makes a lot of sense, all things considered. During a battle with the Avengers, Rogue absorbs the powers of Carol Danvers, or Miss Marvel at the time. But instead of losing these borrowed powers after a while, which is normally how Rogue's abilities work, Carol Danvers' powers and even her memories stick around. With this hero's thoughts in her head, she goes to Professor X to try to clear them out using his help, and this visit is when she becomes friendly with Charles Xavier, eventually joining the X-Men. At number 6 we have Harley Quinn. First appearing in the Batman the Animated Series, she has only grown in popularity over the years as one of DC's most popular villains. And considering she started as a partner to Joker, it's big news that in her current lore she's known to have flipped over to the good side. Her and the Suicide Squad have even teamed up to defeat the Joker, which is a major moment for the character who has otherwise been seemingly under the control of Joker for most of her villainous career. And what's more, Harley now works as a psychiatrist outside of fighting crime, with intentions of helping people on and off the job as a superhero. At number 5 we've got Modok Superior. This dude is a bit of a weirdo and probably one of the last villains you'd expect would go to the good side. Mainly just because he looks so inherently evil. I mean, no offense. Maybe it's the robotic spider legs or even the shit-eating grin he's always got on. Okay, I guess that's just straight up offensive, but lo and behold, it is true. Modok stands for mechanized organism designed only for killing, which is hilarious and initially strikes me as an inherently evil name, but I guess killing could also be done on the bad guys, right? Well, apparently so, because during the Secret Avengers storyline, Modok Superior, a clone of the original, actually joins the Avengers. I guess the bar is pretty low for entry. Sorry, that was another mean jab at Modok. I didn't mean it. Turns out he only really joins the team because he has a crush on Maria Hill, one of the operatives in S.H.I.E.L.D. So, a turn to the good side for love. That's special. Good luck, buddy. We're rooting for you. At number 4, we have Magneto. Now, Magneto does good a few different times for various reasons, and sure, he always goes back to his anti-hero status, but these changes to the good side are substantial enough that it puts him on the front end of this list. One instance of Magneto blatantly coming to the good side is when his old friend Charles Xavier dies, and his dying wish is for Magneto to take over the school for gifted youngsters, and Magneto does it for his old friend. Another notable one is the time in X-Men Legacy issue number 237 when Sentinels are infiltrating an asteroid where Magneto is protecting the remaining mutants. And with the mutants on the brink of extinction, Magneto pulls out all the stops, bringing himself to a point of near death where he triumphantly stops the Sentinels in their tracks before finishing off the mutant race. It's not that surprising that Magneto risks it all for mutants. I mean, he's always been on their side, just with a little more resentment in his heart and questionable methods. And some even say that Magneto has always been a good guy. And I'd probably agree with that, but in some instances, it's more obvious than others. At number 3 is Deadpool. Did you know that when Deadpool made his first appearance, he was actually depicted as a villain to the X-Men in the New Mutants? He faces off against heroes like Cable and Domino, and he's only sort of himself in these early iterations. He still drops witty quips, but definitely comes off more serious and reserved than how we know him today. He also appears in issue 2 of X-Force, still as a villain, and in this instance we actually see Weapon X, or Kane, visiting Deadpool in his home country of Canada. But it's not a nice visit, of course. Deadpool is still very much a threat to the good guys at this point, and only later do the writers start to explore Deadpool further and decide that he deserves his own complex backstory and ambiguous moral compass. Thank goodness they saw his potential as an influential hero, because all the box office dollars he's turned in proves that we all do too. Okay, at number 2 we have Venom. This popular symbiote has clearly done a fair amount of time as the evil counterpart to Spider-Man, and there's no doubt that he was written originally as a bad guy. Eddie Brock and Venom have had many different run-ins with Spider-Man over the years, being labeled usually as Spidey's arch nemesis. But what's interesting about Venom, in the case of his good or evil affiliations, is that it's unclear whether or not the symbiote is inherently evil on its own, or if it's influenced by its host. Because in both cases, Venom has bonded with individuals who have been hurt by parents, or are, in the case of Brock, deeply resentful and jealous. Regardless, there have been numerous storylines, primarily starting in 1993, where Venom and Spider-Man basically have a total truce and even work together on numerous occasions. These days, it's not unheard of to see Venom going out of his way to protect innocent civilians in the line of duty. Finally, at number 1 is Punisher. I put Punisher up at number 1 because he's got to be one of the most badass superheroes of all time, and the fact that he chooses to do good is a really cool character trait considering his look and how he carries himself. It sort of proves that the good side can even be enticing for someone as naturally dark and troubled as Frank Castle. First appearing as a villain, the Punisher is vying to seek revenge on Spider-Man, who he believes killed Norman Osborn. But after his first appearance as a villain, Castle makes it his duty to take on crime as a vigilante. He just does things his own way, through torture, extortion, and kidnapping, among other means. He just doesn't care how he gets his work done, but hey, he's still technically on the good side, regardless of how he does things.
Number 10, the Pied Piper. Hartley Rathaway was born deaf, but had his hearing medically restored and developed a love for music. He learned how to hypnotize others with music to force them to do what he wanted, and he became the supervillain, the Pied Piper. He was sent to a mental hospital, and unlike everyone who goes to Arkham, it actually worked, and Hartley began using his abilities for good, making sure that the city's homeless were fed and sheltered. He became good friends with Wally West's Flash, and has even helped Flash take out a few villains over the years, such as the Turtle and Mirror Master. Number 9, Two-Face. Harvey Dent was once one of Batman's staunchest allies, working with him as Gotham's district attorney in their effort to root out the crime and corruption that had plagued the city. This all changed when Dent was talking to the crime boss Salvatore Maroni in court. Maroni had smuggled in a vial of highly corrosive acid into the courtroom and threw it in Harvey's face, disfiguring half of his face and turning the heroic district attorney into the villainous Two-Face. Two-Face is obsessed with duality and flips a coin to determine whether or not he will kill his enemies. Two-Face is one of Batman's worst enemies, but when the villain Hush gave him plastic surgery, he switched back to the side of law and order and betrayed Hush, helping Batman and Jim Gordon defeat the villain. Batman's friend was back. He trained Harvey to become a vigilante and left him in charge of protecting Gotham while he was away during the Lost Year arc. Unfortunately, when Batman returned, he came across a series of killings that were designed to make it appear that Harvey had returned to villainy. Batman confronted Harvey, who was so angered at Batman's distrust that his Two-Face persona re-emerged and convinced Dent to re-scar his face and return to a life of crime. Number 8, Absorbing Man. Carl Creel was a former boxer turned criminal who was in prison when the trickster god Loki gave him the power to absorb the properties of whatever he touched, making him a powerful villain known as the Absorbing Man. Over the years, Creel went up against a host of heroes, including Thor, Spider-Man, Daredevil, and the Hulk, but he always ended up back in jail. When the government decided to go after the Hulk, they gave Creel boosted powers and sent him to take out Hulk. For reasons that are too complex to get into here, Creel was taken over by the One Below All and sent to Hell until he was rescued by the newly formed Gamma Flight, an organization dedicated to subduing dangerous gamma mutates. They offered Creel a spot on the team and a full pardon, and the Absorbing Man became a fully sanctioned hero, dedicated to helping people rather than hurting them. Number 7, Dr. Octopus. One of Spider-Man's oldest foes, first appearing in Amazing Spider-Man number 3, Dr. Otto Octavius was a gifted scientist before the 4 mechanical arms he created to help with his experiments were fused to his body, driving him insane and into a life of crime. Doc Ock actually did eventually become a superhero, when he swapped bodies with Peter Parker and chose to become the Superior Spider-Man. Although still a temperamental egomaniac, Octavius was able to do a lot of good as the new webbed wall crawler, eventually even sacrificing his life so that Peter could regain control of the body and save the day from the Goblin King. Otto soon returned to life, but unfortunately returned to a life of villainy soon after. It must be frustrating for Spider-Man to fight his old foe now that he knows for a fact that Otto could be and was an amazing superhero for a time. Number 6. Sandman. William Baker was raised in less than ideal circumstances, with a father who abandoned him as a baby and a mother who coped with this by drinking too much. He grew up to be a bully, calling himself Flint and picking on those weaker and smaller than him. After being expelled from high school for throwing a football game, Flint turned to crime to support himself. He was eventually arrested but broke out of prison and was exposed to radiation that gave him the power to turn his body into sand that he could reshape into whatever shape he liked. He used these powers to fight heroes such as Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four for years, but eventually expressed a desire to go straight. He developed a friendship with the Thing and even rescued his old nemesis Spider-Man from the evil enforcers. He would go on to join Silver Sable's Wild Pack and was eventually allowed to join the Avengers, showing that he really did have it in him to be a hero. Unfortunately, a villain known as the Wizard created a machine that undid all of Flint's hard work and returned him to his evil nature. Number 5. Modok Superior. Modok Superior is the cloned brain of the original Modok in a new robot body. Like the original Modok, this version wanted to do as much evil as possible. However, he eventually made a deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to help them uncover a traitor in exchange for amnesty. He planned on betraying Maria Hill, but realized that he'd fallen in love with her. This caused Modok Superior to have a change of heart, and he became a rather unconventional hero, helping the secret Avengers and forming his own hero team, mercenary organization dedicated only to killing. He also programmed himself for love, and created a more attractive version of himself called Brodok, bio-robotic organism designed overwhelmingly for kissing. But his inability to handle rejection from women soon led him back down the path of villainy. Number 4. The Green Goblin. Norman Osborn is perhaps the most awful villain in Spider-Man's rogues gallery. He has spent years trapped in a cycle of hatred and violence with Peter Parker and is responsible for some of the worst moments in Peter's life, such as the death of one of Peter's great loves, Gwen Stacy. Which is why the idea of the Green Goblin becoming a superhero seems so strange. And yet, it happened. When the Sin Eater took away Norman's sins, Osborn was reformed. He wanted to make up for the evil that he had spent years doing, and he ditched the Green Goblin persona and got a new suit and name, calling himself Gold Goblin, and teaming up with Spider-Man to help keep the city safe. I doubt that Marvel will let Norman be a hero forever, so it's probably only a matter of time before Norman goes off the deep end again, but for now, it's interesting to watch him try and be a hero. Number 3. Clayface. Basil Carlo was a successful and talented actor who was disfigured in a car accident just as his film career was really starting to take off. He began using a chemical putty called Renew, which allowed him to reshape his face in order to try and preserve his career. When his supply ran out, he attempted to steal it from the Gotham chemical plant and ended up being doused in the dangerous chemical. This transformed him into the villain Clayface. Clayface is able to shapeshift in order to impersonate anyone he wants, as well as take the form of anything he wants, transforming his arms into dangerous weapons or suffocating his enemies by taking on a dense mud-like form. He was one of Batman's most dangerous villains for years, but the Dark Knight was able to see his potential for good. He offered him a spot on the Gotham Knights, and Clayface was able to make the transition from supervillain to superhero. Unlike other villains who have dabbled in good deeds but have ultimately returned to evil, Clayface actually seems to prefer being a good guy. Not only has he developed friendships with his teammates, but he also managed to convince other villains to try and redeem themselves when he was able to get the villains Firefly, Knockout, Cheshire, and Killer Croc to help him take out the evil Peacekeeper drones in the Fear State story arc. Villains have an unfortunate habit of returning to evil, but let's hope Clayface is able to resist the temptation and remains one of Gotham's most unlikely heroes. Number 2. The Riddler. When Edward Nygma was a child, he quickly showed that he had a gifted and powerful mind. His father was unable to come to terms with his son's brilliance and would hurt Edward, claiming that Edward's academic achievements were a result of him cheating. This caused Edward to develop a compulsive need to prove his intelligence, which resulted in him becoming the Riddler, a supervillain with the uncontrollable urge to leave riddles at the scenes of his crimes. This tendency to leave clues usually led to him getting caught by Batman. He eventually overcame this compulsion and reformed, becoming an accomplished private detective in Gotham City. He still has a massive ego, but he has helped Batman solve several murders over the years and has even saved a few lives, including the intended victim of a copycat villain called Conundrum and Dick Grayson. Considering how much he has accomplished as a good guy, it makes me wonder what he could have been capable of had he been raised in a more nurturing environment and had put his genius mind towards good sooner in his life. Unfortunately, all of this character development was undone in the New 52 reboot of the DC Universe, and the Riddler is once again an unrepentant supervillain. Number 1. Lex Luthor. Superman's greatest foe is a billionaire industrial genius who constantly comes up with evil schemes to feed his own ego under the guise of helping humanity. Like Elon Musk if he actually knew how to invent anything. Lex has battled the heroes of the Justice League for years, but eventually ended up saving the Earth from the crime syndicate. This shifted public opinion on the supervillain, and deciding that he liked the attention, Luthor became a hero and even managed to force his way onto the Justice League. When Superman died in the events of DC Rebirth, Luthor decided to take over the mantle, showing up in Superman's cape and a supersuit with the House of L symbol on its chest. Despite the objection of the pre-Flashpoint Superman, who had been transported to this new reality, Lex operated as a Superman for a while before his resentment of his fellow heroes' mistrust led him to return to evil. It's interesting to know that the only thing preventing Lex from saving the Earth is his own narcissism and ego, and I'm sure it actually makes his evil schemes even more frustrating for the Man of Steel to put up with.